I spent 4 hours optimizing Windows and I gained exactly 2 frames. I'm taking the nuclear option. I'm wiping my entire drive to install Bazzite, which is a Linux operating system that claims to be the king of the FPS. The problem is, I have no idea how to use Linux. I've always avoided it because I thought one wrong command would nuke my entire PC. The operating system for the next generation of gamers. What hardware are you using? Desktop. Yes. Who is the vendor of your primary GPU? I have an AMD GPU, but Nvidia is also supported, and Intel as well. That's nice. What desktop environment do you prefer? KDE, GNOME. Let's go with KDE. Do you want Steam gaming mode? I actually don't like it, so let's go with no. Download Bazzite. What's the difference between live ISO and default install? Boom. Alright. The ISO is downloaded. Let's create the bootable USB drive now. Let's select our ISO. Yep. And let's click start. Took us 27 minutes. Hopefully it's worth it. Next, we had to take a quick trip into the BIOS. Since the computer is set to load Windows automatically, we have to change the boot order. Basically, we are telling it to ignore the hard drive for a second and launch our USB installer instead. Welcome to Bazzite. Continue. Installation summary. Wanted to stop here for a second. You know the old joke that installing Linux is like trying to defuse a bomb. You expect to type 50 lines of code, access the kernel, and while you're at it, probably get a computer science degree. But here's the actual reality. With Bazzite and probably other Linux distros, it is incredibly simple. I just had to select the hard drive I wanted to use. I typed my username and that was it. We were ready to install. Now, compare that to Windows. Installing Windows feels like an interrogation. They ask you a bunch of random questions. And the worst part, you basically can't install Windows anymore without an internet connection and Microsoft account. They are slowly removing the option to just have a normal offline computer. So while Linux is getting easier, Windows is getting annoying. But anyways, let's continue. I guess let's begin the installation. It's actually so much easier to install this operating system rather than Windows, for example. Alright, and we're in. First thing I notice immediately is that Steam is actually installed already. Yeah, and I can probably just log in. And yes, worked like a charm. That's nice. But let's see what else is there. Firefox is installed. That's nice. Loot Trace. Video game preservation platform. What is that? Welcome to Loot Trace. Play all your games in Linux. I'm not too sure what this app does, but I guess we can add our Steam games to it. Okay, that's cool. Terminal. Ooh. View system information. Let's type fast fetch. And yeah, all of our system information is displayed here. Okay, that's cool. Bazaar. This is almost like an app store, I guess. Maybe let's try to search for Discord. Confirm action. Boom. And it's easy as that. Search for Spotify. Install Google Chrome as well. Let's see if Discord is now available. Discord. And it's right here. Of course, it's downloading updates. And yeah, works like a charm. Let's go into the system settings now. Oh, we can choose between dark and light theme. Let's try the light theme. Yeah. Works pretty well. Animation speed. By the way, these animations look so nice. They're so smooth. And we can make them instant as well. Apply. Or we can make them extra slow. That's nice. Mouse and touchpad. Enable pointer acceleration. I hate mouse acceleration, so let's disable that. Yeah, it feels so much better now. Game controller. No game controllers found. Wait. Let me try plugging in my controller. I have this old Xbox 360 controller. It's a classic and still works like a charm. But using it on Windows can be a headache. On Windows, it doesn't always just work. I usually have to go into the device manager, dig through a list to find the unknown device, right-click it, and manually force it to install the driver myself. But on Bazzite, I literally just plugged it in and it worked instantly. I didn't touch a single setting. That's definitely a point for Linux. Alright. Let's continue. What other settings are there? Drawing tablet. We don't have a drawing tablet. Sound. All of our sound settings are here. Wallpaper. What other wallpapers are there? Let's try that one. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. Colors and themes. Ooh, let's try this one. Apply. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's so nice. I like that a lot. I'll keep this one. What is this? Brightness and color. Oh, you can change the monitor brightness from the settings. This is so good quality of life feature. Alright. Power and battery. Power profile. Let's go with performance. Okay. And that's pretty much it. Okay, it works, but I deleted Windows for FPS. I want to test if there are actually any performance differences between the two operating systems. We're already logged in and let's search for Valheim. I hope this works. Oh, it's downloading different stuff. Steam Linux Runtime 2.0 Soldier. Steam Linux Runtime 1.0 Scout. I guess these are some Linux runtimes that need to be downloaded before we can actually play the game. Actually, one more thing. To give better comparison, I wanted to see the numbers so that we can actually verify the performance difference between the two operating systems. On Windows, I usually grab MSI Afterburner, fire up Privadurner statistics, and boom, I got my FPS, temperature, and usage right on the screen. So naturally, I went to the MSI website on Linux to download it, and I hit a wall. There is no Linux version. And this brings up a massive point you have to understand. Just because an operating system is made for gaming doesn't mean your entire Windows toolbox comes with it. Windows applications, specifically .exe files, don't natively run here. You can't just click install and expect it to work. But this is where Linux community shines. There is always an alternative. And in this case, I found something called Mango Hard, which is pretty much the same thing, but it's built for Linux. So the takeaway is that tools might change and you might need to relearn your workflow, but the capability is almost always there. You just have to be willing to look for the alternative. First up, Valheim. Now, I maxed out all the settings here because if we're testing this, we're going all out, right? I loaded up the exact same world, stood in the exact same spot on both Windows and Linux, and just ran around a bit to see what happens. On Windows, I was getting around 100 to 110 FPS, which is pretty solid, nothing to complain about really. The game felt smooth, everything was working fine. But then I put it into Linux. Same world, same location, same maxed out settings. 120 to 140 FPS. Wait, what? I'm getting 20 to 30 more frames on Linux. And here's the thing that really got to me. The CPU usage. On Windows, my CPU was sitting at around 15 to 20%. On Linux, 10%. It's using less of my CPU and somehow giving me more frames. Now okay, to be fair, Valheim is natively supported on Linux, so maybe that's why it runs better. But still, I was not expecting a difference this big. Like, that's a noticeable performance boost just from switching operating systems. That's kind of insane when you think about it. Alright, game number 2, F124. I was actually pretty excited to test this one because, you know, racing games are always a good benchmark for performance. So I put into Linux, launched the game, and it doesn't run at all. And here's why. F124 has EA's Anticheat, and EA's Anticheat does not play nice with Linux. Like, it straight up refuses you to play the game, which means no F1 on Linux. And this is probably the biggest problem with Linux gaming right now. It's not really a Linux problem, it's an anti-cheat problem. Most multiplayer games use kernel level anti-cheat software, and a lot of these developers just haven't enabled Linux support. Sometimes it's because they don't want to, sometimes they don't just care enough. But what does it mean to you? Well, if you play games like Fortnite, you can't play it on Linux. Battlefield? Nope. Apex? Nope. Valorant? Nope. Basically, if a game has aggressive anti-cheat, there's a pretty good chance it won't work. Now, before you go and install Linux thinking, oh, I'll just figure it out, there are actually websites that tell you exactly which games work and which don't. The main one is called Are We Anti-Cheat Yet? And yes, that's the actual name of the website. It will tell you which games have Linux support and which don't. There's also ProtonDB, which is basically a massive database where people test games and report whether they work on Linux or not. So yeah, if you're someone who plays a lot of competitive multiplayer games with anti-cheat, Linux might not be for you, at least not yet. But if you mostly play single player games or multiplayer games without the kernel level anti-cheat, you're probably good to go. Alright, moving on, Counter-Strike 2. Now this is interesting because CS2 is made by Valve, and Valve is basically the company pushing Linux gaming forward with Teamtech and Proton and all that stuff. So logically, CS2 should run amazing on Linux, right? I loaded up Dust 2, same settings on both operating systems, just ran around a bit trying to feel if there was any difference, and honestly, I couldn't really tell. But I also ran an actual benchmark test to get some real numbers. On Windows, we got 307 FPS. On Linux, 295 FPS. So Windows actually performed slightly better, which is kind of hilarious when you think about it, because this is literally Valve's own game, and Windows is beating it by about 10 or 15 frames. Now, don't get me wrong, 295 FPS is still incredibly high, and you're definitely not going to notice a difference between 295 FPS and 307 in actual gameplay. But it's just funny that the one game where Windows had a slight edge is the game made by the company that's trying to make Linux gaming a thing. I'm not entirely sure why Windows performed better here. Could be driver optimizations, could be how the SourceTwo engine handles things differently on each operating system. Honestly, I don't know, but the difference is so small that it basically doesn't matter. Minecraft. And honestly, this is the one that blew my mind the most. Same settings on both operating systems. I literally copied the exact same world file to both systems, so I could test in the exact same spot with the exact same chunks loaded. And since Minecraft doesn't have a built-in benchmark, I just watched the FPS counter while playing. Now, Minecraft FPS fluctuates a lot, like it's all over the place depending on what you're looking at. But here's what I noticed. Linux was consistently higher, not just a little bit higher. I'm talking sometimes 100 FPS better than Windows. 100 frames, that's not a small difference, that's massive. And just like Valheim, the CPU usage told the same story. Windows was hitting 20% CPU usage at times, while Linux was chilling at around 10%. I also tested different render distances to see if that would make a difference. And every single time Linux came out ahead. I don't know what kind of black magic is happening here, but Linux is just handling Minecraft better, way better. So yeah, Linux is destroying Minecraft for some reason. But you know what's actually crazy? Like, I've been using this for however long, and honestly, it just works. Like, I keep waiting for something to break or some weird Linux thing to happen where I have to open the terminal and type some command I don't understand, but just hasn't happened yet, which actually makes me curious. Okay, so gaming works, but what about the actual day-to-day stuff? Like, can this handle my actual workflow? Let me just check if this works.